Well, good morning, scholars, and welcome back to the House of Knowledge for our Tuesday, March 31st session of ELA and Reading class. I hope that you have all logged into Miss Davis's math class as well on Zoom, and now I'm happy that you're joining me. I hope that you're beginning to read the book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And today we are going to do a quick review of yesterday and then do an introduction to the book. Let's begin our introduction to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. We will start with a quick review of what we covered yesterday. The author of our novel is C.S. Lewis, and that is short for Clive Staples Lewis. C.S. Lewis was born in 1898 in Ireland. He was a close friend of J.R.R. Tolkien, whom you probably know as the author of The Hobbit. Both of them belonged to a writers' club called the Inklings. C.S. Lewis was very fascinated with fantasy and fairy tales, and he wrote over 65 books and short stories. This is a picture of the home of C.S. Lewis. It is still standing today, and it is a very popular tourist attraction. It is called the Kilns, and it is located in Oxford, England. This is the church where C.S. Lewis worshiped very faithfully. It is called Holy Trinity Church, and it was affiliated with the Church of England. This church also still stands and is also a very popular tourist attraction. It is about a 10-minute walk from his home. This is Magdalen College, and this is where C.S. Lewis taught. And Magdalen College was affiliated with Oxford University and is also still in operation today. We learned yesterday that C.S. Lewis served in the British Army during World War I. He did not get married until the age of 58, and then unfortunately his wife died 4 years later, but he did continue to raise his stepchildren as his own. His writing was heavily influenced by his faith. He became an atheist at the age of 15, but at the age of 30, he again became a believer in God. 2 years later, he became a Christian. His conversion to believing in God and also following Christ was heavily influenced by his friendship with J.R.R. Tolkien, who we have already said was famous for writing The Hobbit and also Lord of the Rings. Let's watch another brief video. In this one, we are going to hear a reading of C.S. Lewis personally describing how he came to change his heart and his mind.
Then I read Chesterton's Everlasting Man, and for the first time saw the whole Christian outline of history set out in a form that seemed to me to make sense. Somehow I contrived not to be too badly shaken. You will remember that I already thought Chesterton the most sensible man alive, apart from his Christianity. Now, I veritably believe, I thought, I didn't of course say, words would have revealed the nonsense, that Christianity itself was very sensible, apart from its Christianity. But I hardly remember, for I had not long finished The Everlasting Man when something far more alarming happened to me. Early in 1926, the hardest-boiled of all the atheists I ever knew sat in my room on the other side of the fire and remarked that the evidence for the historicity of the Gospels was really surprisingly good. "Rum thing," he went on, "all that stuff of Fraser's about the dying God. Rum thing. It almost looks as if it had really happened once." To understand the shattering impact of it, you would need to know the man, who has certainly never since shown any interest in Christianity. If he, the cynic of cynics, the toughest of the toughs, were not, as I would still have put it, safe, where could I turn? Was there then no escape? The odd thing was that before God closed in on me, I was in fact offered what now appears a moment of wholly free choice. in a sense. I was going up Headington Hill on the top of a bus. Without words, and, I think, almost without images, a fact about myself was somehow presented to me. I became aware that I was holding something at bay, or shutting something out, or, if you like, that I was wearing some stiff clothing, like corsets, or even a suit of armour, as if I were a lobster. I felt myself being, there and then, given a free choice. I could open the door or keep it shut. I could unbuckle the armour or keep it on. Neither choice was presented as a duty, no threat or promise was attached to either, though I knew that to open the door or to take off the corselet meant the incalculable. The choice appeared to be momentous, but it was also strangely unemotional. I was moved by no desires or fears. In a sense, I was not moved by anything. I chose to open, to unbuckle, to loosen the rein. I say I chose, yet it did not really seem possible to do the opposite. On the other hand, I was aware of no motives. You could argue that I was not a free agent, but I am more inclined to think that this came nearer to being a perfectly free act than most that I have ever done. Necessity may not be the opposite of freedom, and perhaps a man is most free when, instead of producing motives, he could only say, "I am what I do."
At this point, I want to give a brief clarification just to put everyone at ease. You have probably already noticed that the topic of religion is coming up a lot as we prepare to read this novel. So is it okay for us to be discussing religion in a public school setting? Are we breaking any laws? Are we respecting the freedom of each student? So we're going to cover just a little bit of history and give a little bit of legal clarification, just to assure you that we're not going to do anything that would violate the law or make you uncomfortable. In 1963, the U.S. Supreme Court heard a case entitled School District of Abington Township, Pennsylvania versus Shemp. And at that time, under Pennsylvania law, public schools were required to read from the Bible at the opening of each school day. Now, there was a parent named Edward Shemp who did not want his son Ellery to participate in this. He claimed that it was unconstitutional. He was a Unitarian Universalist. That was his religious denomination, and he did not agree with everything that they were reading from the Bible in school. Around that same time, there was an atheist in Baltimore, Maryland, named Madeline Murray O'Hare, and she decided that she did not want her son William to participate in the required prayers and Bible readings in the Baltimore public schools. So she also filed a lawsuit. The two lawsuits gained a lot of attention, and the Supreme Court combined them into one lawsuit and then heard them. This was the Supreme Court's final ruling on the matter, and it was regarding the First Amendment, which has what we call an establishment clause. That's the portion that says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And it also has what we call the free exercise clause, which says or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And the two clauses are designed to balance one another out. And so the Supreme Court ruled that the First Amendment's Establishment Clause prohibits public schools from sponsoring devotional Bible readings or reciting the Lord's Prayer. But on the flip side, the Supreme Court also stated this in the ruling. In addition, it might be well said that one's education is not complete without a study of comparative religion or the history of religion and its relationship to the advancement of civilization. It certainly may be said that the Bible is worthy of study for its literary and historic qualities. Nothing we have said here indicates that such study of the Bible or of religion, when presented objectively as part of a secular program of education, may not be effected consistently with the First Amendment. So what the Supreme Court was saying there is that the Bible and religion can be used for the teaching of literature and history in the public school classroom. So what does this mean to us as we study a book written by C.S. Lewis? This means that you will never be graded or evaluated on whether or not you agree with the religious beliefs of C.S. Lewis. We are simply learning what he believed so that we can understand his history and his literature as a famous author. Everything that we present will be within the guidelines of the Supreme Court's ruling and the First Amendment. So now let's begin introducing the novel itself. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the first in a series of 7 books called the Chronicles of Narnia. And those 7 books are The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was published in 1950, Prince Caspian, published in 1951, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, published in 1952, The Silver Chair, published in 1953, The Horse and His Boy, published in 1954, The Magician's Nephew, published in 1955, and The Last Battle, published in 1956. C.S. Lewis began writing The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in 1939, and there were a couple of major events in his life that influenced this. First, as a child, his Irish nurse had told him many tales of ancient myths. Second, during World War II, there were 4 children who stayed with him at his country house and stirred his imagination. And you'll see the influence of both of those as you begin reading the novel. It took him a long time to finish this novel. In 1948, he finally resumed writing it and finished it in 1949. C.S. Lewis wrote this book for his goddaughter, Lucy Barfield. A goddaughter or godson is a child that you agree to care for should their parents become deceased. Lucy was the daughter of his good friend Owen Barfield. And the book opens up with a message to Lucy, which says, "My dear Lucy, I wrote this story for you, but when I began it, I had not realized that girls grow quicker than books. As a result, you are already too old for fairy tales, and by the time it is printed and bound, you will be older still. But someday, you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again. You can then take it down from some upper shelf, dust it, and tell me what you think of it. I shall probably be too deaf to hear and too old to understand a word you say, but I shall still be your affectionate godfather, C.S. Lewis." This book is what we call an allegory. An allegory is a story that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, and it is typically a moral or political meaning. So you could also say that an allegory shares a hidden theme. We've learned many times over that theme is the main social issue being addressed. In an allegory, the characters and places usually symbolize or stand for moral concepts, such as right and wrong or good and evil, and you'll see that play out as we begin reading this novel. Let's watch a video that tells us a little more about allegory.
Okay, so here's the question at hand. What is an allegory? Now, as you all know, it's a literary term. An allegory is actually the use of characters, events, or ideas in a novel or literary text that are used to illustrate or show a larger concept, something that's not directly said, but it's implied, rather. Now, this larger concept that I just mentioned can relate to a number of different things. For instance, these larger concepts can pertain to something political, or it could be something religious, it could be historical, or social. Either way, whatever the larger concept is directly pertaining to, the whole point of the allegory is that the author is using the text to provide his or her own commentary on the subject matter. In other words, the author is investing and putting their own opinion into the literary text. Now, in order to identify this, you have to realize that the allegory is almost like a hidden message. It's the author's own hidden message that they want to get across in the novel. And as you read the book or whatever you're reading, you'll eventually start to recognize subtle hints that will lead toward the allegory or the true message that the author is trying to get across. So once you reach the end, you should have a better understanding of the allegory. Thanks for watching.
Well, scholars, I have enjoyed our time today. Just a reminder to begin reading the book. You can find it by going to jmcssnortheast.weebly.com and then click on Reading. Then scroll down to the bottom. There's a button to read the book. There is a button to listen to the book. I want you to do both. And we will pick up there tomorrow. You all have a great day. I love you, and I'm very proud of you.